Omaha Steaks makes it easy to keep great food on hand, so dinner time is simple and convenient. And right now, you can get 12 free burgers and free shipping for life when you shop at omahasteaks.com/onrepeat. Only Omaha Steaks gives you the freedom to set your menu your way with no commitments. Choose extra aged, hand-carved steaks, plump and juicy air-chilled chicken, and so much more. Order once or set up recurring shipments for more savings, more convenience, and inflation-proof pricing. Want to change your menu? No problem. Swap items, skip a shipment, or cancel at any time with no questions asked. You're in control to get what you want when you want it, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. At Omaha Steaks, it's all about you. Visit omahasteaks.com/onrepeat to sign up for recurring shipments and get 12 free burgers, a $431 per year value, and free shipping for life. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
It was difficult for my family, and I think if, I was annoyed then for, my wife and wider family, because they were annoyed by it, and that was sort of like, it was very aggravating, obviously.
What does it take for you and your character and your personality to actually say, no, I am not going to resign, I'm going to continue doing the job that I'm doing?
Mary Kennedy, you are just back from one of my favourite cities in the world, Boston. I'm so jealous. What kind of time did you have there?
It was brilliant. Well, it was supposed to be Dermot Kennedy on tour in Boston and previously in Sydney, but it was actually the Kennedy clan on tour. It was just lovely. Dermot was... everybody, Dermot is my nephew, and he had brought this festival called Mishnock to Sydney and to Boston. It was his idea, and it was a lovely way for him to, I suppose, to celebrate music and musicians. He got great support when he was starting off, and he was giving, other Irish-based musicians an opportunity to get that out. An Irish identity, of course.
And I love that word, Mishnock, courage. Courage is what it means in the Irish language. Lovely word. Sounds like the festival lived up to its name now.
Yeah, because Dermot has a very nice way of connecting people. And, there was a great sense of pride, camaraderie and Mishnock running through the whole event. We had a ball, and I love Boston as well, Mary.
Oh, what a great city. It's a great city and full of Irish.
Full of Irish, with Patrick's Day.
No, inescapable.
There on Patrick's Day.
And so, of course, that's Dermot, of course, showing leadership in his own way, his own unique way, which brings us very neatly to today's guest, who knows more than most people about leading through courage and conviction. If ever the word Mishnock was made for someone, it's made for the man that's with us today.
Yeah, and we have often spoken on this podcast about leadership, the kind that doesn't always come with applause or headlines, but it really does, doesn't it, carry real responsibility and consequence?
And today's guest knows more about that kind of leadership than pretty much anybody else I know. He spent his career at the coalface of public service, navigating probably the most complex, sensitive situations, and with what I know from first-hand experience is just a really calm, steady, humble, but utterly professional presence.
Yeah. When you think about it, from his very early years in policing during a deeply divided time in Northern Ireland, and now leading on Garda Síochána through a period of major reform and change, this has been a remarkable journey.
He's faced very tough decisions, very obviously a lot of public scrutiny, huge demands, and throughout it all, he's shown resilience, integrity, decency of the highest order imaginable, and a real belief in the power of policing to serve and protect communities.
Yeah, it's so much about communities in this podcast as well. And we are deeply honoured to have Garda Commissioner Drew Harris join us today on Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations. Commissioner, you are very welcome to Allenwood.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm looking over my shoulder to see who you're talking about here. But thank you very much. That's a very kind introduction there.
It's all about you. It's all about you today.
Now, we know you as Commissioner. We, the Irish public, know you as Commissioner Drew Harris. Yeah. And you will be stepping down quite soon. But we want to talk about all of those things as well. But can we just place you first? Can we go back to you growing up as a child in Belfast? And, you know, what was your family situation?
Born Belfast, brought up really in Lisburn, and lived with mum and dad. My older brother Brian went to the local primary school and then the local grammar school, and then joined the police at 18. But as a child, I did all that any child would have done in the 70s, and I'm a child really of the 70s, so you know it was all Skelectrics and chopper bikes and Action Man and all those sort of innocent pursuits of that time. And you know, I enjoyed school. It was, as you say, as you allude to, it was against the backdrop of pretty extraordinary times. And obviously then my father was in the police as well, and so we were very conscious and aware of just you know, the terrible situation that was ongoing. And even as a child, like you would have been very aware of that. And but at the same time, I'd say I had a very, you know, happy childhood, and a childhood I look back to with great memories as well.
And yet, well, you're from a policing family, because your dad, and we'll talk more about him in a minute, but policing was in your family. But already in the 70s, it was anything but an easy career, as your family were to discover in more ways than one. So it's not an easy career, particularly in Northern Ireland. What made you decide that it was going to be your vocation?
So this is nearly 42 years ago, so my memory of it is it can be somewhat hazy. I don't mean to be evasive, but I think maybe what I would have said in the job interview for why I wanted to join is somewhat different probably from the probably the motivation was that we were a policing family. I had you know, great sort of admiration for all the work my father was doing at the time, but the sense of duty and responsibility was like through our family, but through our school, and through the church I went to as well. So like there was a lot just about, you know, your responsibility to society and making a contribution, and that probably was the rationale, just to, you know, make a contribution even at a difficult time, and probably more importantly at a difficult time, you make a contribution.
You could have run away from that. I mean, you were really bright. You could have got into university. You could have, a lot of people did scarper from Northern Ireland at that time.
Yeah, well, I could have gone to university if I'd got the results, of course, and but I enjoyed my school as more than school enjoyed me, perhaps. So no, no, it just seemed the natural thing to do. I remember looking around, you know, and it just, you know, like I considered other possibilities, and then in the end thought, no, I'll join the police. And
did you have ambition? Like, did you feel joining the police, well, this is the career for me, and I will go through the different stages, because my goodness, You've served in many very high office in both Northern Ireland and here. So
I suppose in part, I do remember, you know, standing on the parade square as it was in Enniskillen and seeing this, you know, inspector who must have been in his late 20s, you know, dashing young inspector walking along the side of the parade ground, going, oh, well, now if I can do that, then I will. So in part, I think I always had ambition, and the thing about the police, and it's probably true for most police services, is if you have ambition and you want to move on, you can do that as well. Like there's plenty of routes always to go in terms of specialism or promotion, and so the more you want to do, the more you're allowed to do as well. So and I always wanted to push on, in effect. Then
you were a serving police officer in your 20s, I think.
Yeah.
And your daddy was a serving police officer, a high-ranking serving police officer, very, very highly regarded by everybody. And then he was murdered by the IRA. Could you talk to us about that? Because we've heard many people will know about your daddy having been married. What they mightn't know was that he was blown up in a car bomb. Your mummy was in the car as well.
Yeah.
So tell me about that if you can.
Well, I rarely talk about any of this. So it was Sunday morning, and they were heading to church, and so just the car moved off maybe 100 yards, and this bomb detonated. And
at the house, at your own home?
Yes, and my father's fatally injured. My mother was injured, but she got back to the house, and she rang our house. Now, I was out at the time. Jane, my wife, took the call, and she sent a neighbour down into the village where we lived in Hillsborough to find me. And he did find me, and he sent me home. So this is all before mobile phones. Oh, yeah. And then Jane told me, obviously something had happened, but she wasn't sure what. And but that my father was hurt. And then we headed back. We headed into Lisburn. Our son, our firstborn son, was only 5 weeks old, so we had that as well. And so we drove in and to the house, and when we reached the first sort of like outer cordon point, there was police and military police on the first cordon point. And I remember the military, when we said who we were, the military policeman got on his radio, and he referred to my father in the past tense, and I realised then that, he's been killed here. So, and then an inspector and a sergeant came up and confirmed it to me, and like, it's just, that's how it was broke. But my mother had gone to hospital in an ambulance, and she didn't know actually what condition my father was in, so I had to go to the hospital and then tell her that he hadn't survived there. So
was she badly hurt?
Well, she'd
clearly emotionally, yes.
In parts saved by the transmission and the gearbox, and I have sort of in an automatic car, but flash burns and hearing and singeing and all of that there, So it was some ways indescribable, really, But
was anybody ever caught for that, Drew?
There was no. There's nobody ever charged with murder. No. And so
it must be an awful hard thing for a police officer to know that that's happened to your daddy, to know that that's happened, and that there are people out there who wished him such ill, such hatred, and that you weren't able to bring them to justice, or nobody was able to bring them to justice.
Yeah, well, one of the things about this was, and I've talked about having a happy childhood, and I did have a very happy childhood. It was always overshadowed by this worry. Yes. And then the worry came large and came fact and reality. It just didn't come out of nowhere. And I suppose I think you have to make decisions about how you deal with this, So, like, there's the awful rawness of it. It was like like you're I remember at the time, just like you just felt, how could you even carry on another day, But you do, and I had Jane and our son and a family, and so like your life's always in a forward gear.
How was your mum afterwards?
So, Mum's still with us. Mum was very resilient and strong, and so she's remained as well. And we were fortunate in that, we were all lived close together, and so my mum's always sort of been a constant presence then, in the intervening decades. And
did you get good support, within the family and within the community? After such a tragedy?
Within the family and the community as well. But I often think to myself, not comparable to what you see here whenever a guard might lose their life there, or even sort of the remembrance, not comparable. The numbers being killed And just the whole sort of like awfulness of that does make it very difficult for people to focus on any one. By and large, you know, you're left to get on with it there.
Yeah.
So I recognise that. I hear that a lot, and I recognise it entirely. You're left to get on with it, and that's sort of the way it was.
You're just one among many.
Yeah, you're one among many, and you have to make decisions yourself as to how you're going to live your life. Then.
And when you think about that, Drew, what kind of an impact did it have on you personally? Obviously, it was a tragedy. You lost your dad, and in a truly, you know, horrific way. But you were also a serving member, and did it have an impact on the way you would approach policing going forward?
It's a difficult question to answer, because the other life that you would have lived without this trauma isn't open to you. So it's difficult to describe what happened afterwards that might have happened otherwise. And I'm very fortunate to have great support from my wife and children and wider family. I had good friends as well. And in lots of ways, I was in a career which, you know, I really enjoyed, and, you know, I've some ability at, and I enjoyed that as well. So, but we, Jane and I had the 4 children, and they're always in forward gear, and you know, there's all just the love with that, and the solidarity of the family life, and that serves a lot. You know,
given the fact that you have had personal experience, it must give you a huge sympathy and empathy in the job that you do when it comes to other people who are going through trauma.
I would hope, and I think I do, have an understanding of some of the emotions which can be in display. And sometimes people are a little impatient of some of the emotions that are in display. And, you know, people talk about closure, which I always think's, you know, inappropriately used there. You know, they go, so X and Y, and if Z happens now, you'll have closure. No, that's not really the way it works there. The thing to do, I've always thought when meeting bereaved families, is listen, you know, they have a story to tell, and probably too often they're interrupted in telling that story. So at least have the time and civility and, you know, decency to hear them out and learn precisely what's at issue, and then try and deal with that.
In all these years in between, do you ever feel your father's presence close to you on particular occasions?
Yes, certainly. Yes, that's a good question. I think at various times, you know, I've always sort of thought, you know, I wonder what my father would have said about this. You know, even taking this role on.
Exactly.
Wonder what my dad would have said about this.
Did you have that conversation in your head with him?
Well, in part in that on my first day, I carried his whistle in my pocket, so I still had his original whistle, so I carried that whistle in my trouser pockets there. You know, so I think one of the things is that he was killed at 51. And at 24, when you look at 51, you think, oh, you know, you sort of comfort yourself with, well, he led a good life, you know, 51. But when I remember the shock of becoming 51 myself, and realising, yes, there's so much more that you can do, that can be done there, you know. And that felt at the time like a bit like a double whammy, actually, again. So, he's never far from my thoughts ever, really.
Can I ask you about just going back to that relationship you had with your dad? And at 51, he's dead in the most terrifying circumstances. Because he's a police officer. Yeah. Because he's a police officer. You are a police officer with a young family. Would it ever have crossed your mind to say, to heck with this? We'll pack up and go to Australia and get away from all this. Would it ever have occurred to you?
No, that never occurred to me. And now that you ask me the question, I can't really give a good explanation as to why it didn't. But it didn't occur to me. And I think just something in being around the importance of duty and responsibility there, and
you just
making a contribution.
You doubled down on it, really.
Well, yes, in part, yeah. And
that was also, as you said earlier, your reason for joining the police force, with the sense of duty and responsibility and service.
Yes, yeah.
So and you had wee ones coming. You had your firstborn son, and then there was the three others who came along, and you have to be a daddy to them, and you have to bring them up in Northern Ireland. That was still an unresolved place in terms of bitterness, and police officers were still very vulnerable.
Yes,
very vulnerable to paramilitary violence, that the kind of violence that had taken your daddy. So the thing that occurs to me is how do you raise your children in that environment? I know you not to be a person of bitterness, and that is remarkable. I mean, genuinely to have not a shred of bitterness. I think of you and Paddy Keelty. Paddy Keelty's the same, not a shred of bitterness, and yet both of you have been through the same horror. How did you get there?
In the end, I think if you can rationalise it in your head, bitterness is self-destructive. So a terrible, terrible act happens, and what is your response? And your response might be, in the end, self-destructive in being bitter. I didn't want to be bitter because, in part, the family I grew up in was a very loving family, and that's what I wanted to remember, as opposed to bitterness. Like with my grandparents and my parents, there was always laughter and fun and all of that, and like bitterness just was no part of that. And I don't think, there was no purpose in bitterness. It was getting me. It would get me nowhere, and it would be destructive to me, and ultimately destructive to my family as well, and their future. And I did rationalise this, and then you try and act accordingly. Yeah. There, it's not like this. You don't decide like a week later or a month later.
No.
You have to go through like your own rationale and journey with this with your loved ones around you. I say with your family and with wife Jane, and take yourself through this route.
Drew, you advanced through the ranks of the police service in Northern Ireland. You were Assistant Chief Constable and Deputy Chief Constable, and then in 2018 you became Garda Commissioner.
Yes.
Now that has an impact on family. What was your thinking when you decided to go for this position, and also how did it affect your family?
Our children are grown up, so they're visitors backwards and forwards. The biggest impact was on Jane and I in terms of moving to Dublin, and that was something new. And actually, it's been great. So the job, the precondition of it was that you lived in Dublin, and that was fine. Like, that was entirely understandable. You have to be above the shop, so to speak. So that worked out well. I think the biggest impact is just the amount of work and the open all hours. If I use the shop analogy again, you're just open all hours, and everything comes in through the door as well. That has an impact because in effect your responsibilities can take over and really force their way into your life overall, you know. So it's a great privilege to have the job. In some ways it's a lifestyle as well, because you've very little downtime or time free from the responsibilities. Holidays are disturbed or cut short or cancelled. Like, that's just a constant feature. And but that's the role you sign up to, and in part you have to accept that it's going to be difficult work. Yeah.
And did you miss living in? Were you still living in Lisburn?
Yes. Yeah, living in Hillsborough. So, we get up backwards and forwards. Both Jane's mum and my mum are still there with us. So that's nice. That's great actually. So, and I think in the middle of it all was COVID. So we were away for months and months, locked down for months and months. Didn't get to see them, and I think that was the most difficult time because then you didn't see any of your family and you were dependent on Skype and one thing or another. I think that was a particularly difficult time, but it's the same for everybody. We're all in the same boat. But
living above the shop, as you say, in Garda HQ, you kind of has the Phoenix Park as your garden, which must be nice, is it?
Well, we were lucky in when you could only go 2K.
Very good neighbours there.
Yes, very good neighbours as well. When you could only go 2K, we had a very good 2K to go. So. And that was an extraordinary time, and I think probably just last year is when we probably sort of emerged from the shadow of it, and now probably is the time to sort of reflect on it as well. But and Garda Síochána did tremendously well, even in comparison to our international sort of comparators around this. So men and women of Garda Síochána, members and staff, did really well during that period, and it's a source of great pride to us all.
Did it surprise you the difference in the community response to Garda Síochána and the community response when you were growing up in the north to first the RUC and then the PSNI? The fractured nature of community relations in Northern Ireland. It had created attitudes to particularly to the RUC, not so much to the PSNI, but certainly to the RUC, that were in fact probably the reason why it eventually morphed into the PSNI. How did you come to terms with all of that?
So when you're in something, you don't quite appreciate the difference there might be elsewhere. And I was appointed on the 3rd of September, and then a couple of weeks later I went to the Ploughing Championship in 2018. And
baptism of fire.
So the president opened up the official opening. It took me about 50 minutes to get from there to the lunch for people wanting to say hello and wish me well. And I remember reflecting back on that over the next couple of days, and the positivity there was, the welcome, how great all the people were. And I sort of felt perhaps a little sorry for my younger self that I had never particularly seen that before there, So the sort of like the community support there was pretty extraordinary there. So I think that was the first real sort of tangible demonstration of that. But I've seen now that I know to look for it, I've seen it on occasion after occasion, and it makes a huge difference. It makes huge difference in terms of just that relationship, but then how successful that relationship is in around us doing police work. As well, preventing and detecting crime.
Yeah. And when you think about it, and the job that you've been doing since 2018, what are the biggest challenges that you faced when you took over the commissionership of the Garda Síochána?
Well, I think the first thing I just said, in Garda Síochána, very strong underpinnings. Like, it's all about the people, and they're really, really good people there. So, perhaps the systems had gone askew a piece, and they had to be resolved. The second, actually, I think that one of the big challenges was putting front and centre what was important to us. And I had a big focus around organised crime and pursuing those who engage in organised crime, just because the amount of misery they cause in society, which is very often on those who are least able to cope with it. So those who are in a position of vulnerability. But secondly, then another big important area was around violence against women, and focused on domestic abuse, on child sexual abuse, and serious sexual assault. So actually making sure that we were properly equipped to deal with what is a very prevalent crime, and indeed a crime which is recorded as growing in terms of the extremes that are now happening. I think perhaps people who were commenting on my appointment were all about reform of Garda Síochána, where in my head it was all about our performance around certain critical areas, and in doing so would restructure to make sure we were doing our very best. So not reform for reform's sake, but reform for performance against certain areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The challenges that you identify there as facing on Garda Síochána strikes me that they must face a lot of police forces in modern democracies. They must.
Yes.
And they must also face the PSNI north of the border.
Yes.
So is there much in the way of sharing and information transfer? And have you seen a big change in the relationship, the cross-border relationship between the two forces in dealing with those issues? We've always talked about terrorism, of course, before, but there are other pressing issues now that we have the so-called peace.
Well, the organised crime police and the cross-border sort of threats from that, that's been ongoing now for 20 years, but we had a recent conference there in Belfast only 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about cross-border crime in against the context of transnational organised crime. So even doesn't matter how well we're working, we also have to be looking out to Europol and Interpol to be working well with UK law enforcement, particularly the National Crime Agency, but also then US federal law enforcement. So in effect, we have to go on a long route marches around these groups to try and get to those who are really leading them and directing them and getting information and intelligence. And I think one of the things that I really wanted in Garda Síochána to be was seen to be internationally, a willing and competent and capable partner. And other law enforcement agencies are looking for that. You might be surprised you don't actually find it everywhere. So in lots of ways, the more you work with others, the more trust and faith they have in you, then the more you receive. And so in part, that's why we've extended our Garda liaison officer network, but also we've always been big investors in Interpol and Europol as well. So there's lots you can do, but that cross-border relationship has several, facets to it. Like, we can never forget just the, burglary, antisocial behaviour, bad driving in the border areas as well. Things that really impact on people and they worry about, as well as, people using the border for criminal purposes as well.
Are you happier today as you're facing, retiring from, as I don't imagine you're going to retire, but retiring as Commissioner? Would you be happier today than the day you started? At the relationships that have evolved over this time, particularly given that we've had 25 years now, 26 years of the Good Friday Agreement now.
Yes, I am. I'm very happy with the relationship there is with the police service in Northern Ireland. But like any relationship, it just doesn't stay static. It either improves or it goes the other way. So any relationship you have anywhere requires work. And so that's the essence of it. Just, by our mere presence alone, we'll have a successful relationship. Doesn't actually work. People need to see that you're infused, you're engaged, and that you're there as an ally and want to work with them. And that, that goes to PSNI, but it also goes for, Homeland Security in USA or the NCA or relationships into Europol. So that's what I'm very anxious that we would keep going on with, is that, as I say, we're seen to be a willing partner.
When you look at other changes that are happening these days, say the prevalence of, or the emergence of the far right, and there has been an increase in things like protesting, violence, and online propaganda. Is that something also that has
that
to be
awful
taken
event
into?
that we had in O'Connell Street that you had to do with?
November 2023.
Yeah. Opportunistic stuff.
Well, I think the proof of the pudding around this has somewhat been called out last year between the local elections and then the general election. By and large, very minimal electoral impact. So I think that tells us then actually what the true scale is of this actual practical support that's there. Knowing that, and then knowing that they were dealing with a marginalised but very noisy group there, then that sets the tactics around that. And for our part then, that is obviously gather intelligence, but also then when appropriate, that should follow on then to a criminal justice response as well. So, people can hold whatever views they want. It's when they, like, for my part, my responsibility is whenever that moves across into breach of the criminal code. It's for politicians to win the argument. It's for me then to deal with it. Deal with the criminality if it occurs.
Yeah. And we spoke about the relationship between the cooperation between different organisations. How would you feel about the relationships within on Garda Síochána, with regard to the serving members and the relationship that the management would have with them?
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
Omaha Steaks makes it easy to keep great food on hand, so dinner time is simple and convenient. And right now, you can get 12 free burgers and free shipping for life when you shop at omahasteaks.com/onrepeat. Only Omaha Steaks gives you the freedom to set your menu your way with no commitments. Choose extra-aged, hand-carved steaks, plump and juicy air-chilled chicken, and so much more. Order once or set up recurring shipments for more savings, more convenience, and inflation-proof pricing. Want to change your menu? No problem. Swap items, skip a shipment, or cancel at any time with no questions asked. You're in control to get what you want when you want it, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. At Omaha Steaks, it's all about you. Visit omahasteaks.com/onrepeat to sign up for recurring shipments and get 12 free burgers, a $431 per year value, and free shipping for life. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
We are very much a people business. It is all about the people within Garda Síochána, and then how then they deliver what is actually a very human endeavour in terms of policing. So it is all about the people. So we've done a huge amount of work around survey work and getting sort of what the feel is within the place, the sort of the cultural audits, etc., and responded to those. So a lot of the stuff was around the welfare supports, put a lot of welfare support in place, but also then, the support of having first line supervision, that people actually, guards felt that they were a little bit cut adrift because they didn't have a sergeant or indeed an inspector to turn to. We've resolved that. The promotion process has moved to being, one which is seen to be equitable and fair in its application. And then, obviously, then the opportunities still arise then for people to advance. But we've made huge strides as well around equipment and the things which sort of like annoy people. So there's a new uniform, far more vehicles. Our ICT keeps on moving on, so the computer systems that people have available to them. At the same time, there's been population growth, and actually the things that Garda members are dealing with practically out on the ground are getting more and more complex. Can involve, different cultures, different languages, often involve trauma or vulnerability, which is, is far more complex to deal with than the theft of a radio cassette from a car. So it's just there is huge complexity now in society through vulnerability, and some of that is mental health vulnerability, and some of that is also through addiction addiction either to drink or drugs or combination therefore. So like Garda members are having to deal with things which I think are a lot more complex than I would have seen, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah.
You've made history really by becoming Garda Commissioner in the first place. I mean, the first member from outside the force to become a Garda Commissioner, and the first person from Northern Ireland to become a Garda Commissioner, not to say nothing of coming from the PSNI in Northern Ireland. How did you feel when you also made history when one of the organisations within Garda Síochána organised a national vote of their members that went against you? How did you feel when that happened? That's never happened before.
No, and I think it was a particular moment in time. There was a lot going on in terms of just equipment changes, ICT in particular, and improvements there around rosters, the COVID roster, and going back to changing rosters then, and the COVID roster was very popular. Various things were being put together, and then they decided on a vote of no confidence. So it just, in the end, you have to take note of that and the underlying themes there and do your very best to address those. I think we've done that. And in some way then make sure that you've seemed to have listened and to have moved things forward again, and changed or dealt with the various issues which were at hand at the time.
Were you hurt by it, personally hurt by it?
I wouldn't say I was personally hurt. It was sort of like it was difficult for my family, and I think if hurt's a very strong word, and I was annoyed then for my wife and wider family, because they were annoyed by it, and that was sort of like it was very aggravating, obviously, but I'm not sure. Hurt would be entirely. Whilst it was going on, like I had meetings with all the associations and meetings with the other management of the organisation. The thing about it was, I'd go out round the stations and people were perfectly friendly and welcoming. And you go, this is sort of, how on earth is this happening? So.
But what does it take in a circumstance like that, where the vote is overwhelmingly of no confidence? I mean, it's 96.8% or something like that. What does it take for you and your character and your personality to actually say, no, I am not going to resign. I'm going to continue doing the job that I'm doing?
Well, I think there's a number of things. You have to think, well, like how bad is this? Is this completely irretrievable? And I didn't think it was, because just my experience of going around stations and that connection with people, and secondly, then the issues which were arising were issues which were there was a way of resolving them, and then lastly, well, there's so much to do there, and so much that I wanted to do, and so much that I think is valuable to society in terms of providing a policing service that I wanted to do, and in the end, I just felt that was my responsibility. That you take on a role like this, and you can't really expect it to be an easy ride. It's not going to be. You're in the wrong job if you're expecting a handy time of it. It's not the way. I mightn't have predicted this, but certainly it was followed closely, and I'm glad it did stay, because it was followed pretty closely then by the disorder of the 23rd of November. Yeah. So terrible traumatic incident, followed then by disorder, which then spirals. And then our response to that on the night which was in the middle of, and then our response subsequent to that in terms of just, making sure there was no more public disorder, and then rebuilding confidence in the city centre, in the run into shopping. And I'm really glad it did stay, because in the experience I had, these were all things I'd seen and done before.
And Drew, as you prepare now to step down from the role of Garda Commissioner on the 1st of June, how do you feel? Because you speak with great passion and commitment to the work that you were doing. How do you feel about the change?
And you could have stayed, because God knows the government would have very much wished you to stay on.
They did, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I've never done it before. So I'm not sure quite how I feel. I'm certainly going to miss the work, and I'm certainly going to miss the people, and there's a lot of adrenaline rush in this work too. Like either failure or success, comes along. But at the same time, I'm nearly will have 42 years service at the end of this year. And
you're reaching a milestone birthday, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 60.
Very young.
So, but I'm also mindful of, there's plenty to do left, and maybe then I should pursue some of that as well. Go on an unbroken holiday with Jane, and there for instance,
no phone holiday.
I know phone holiday for instance. So there's plenty to do like that. But then I think probably the rest, and I'm a grandfather as well. So. It's hard to believe, but there you are. So, but it's great. It's great. I just. The thing is, when you're sitting at the desk, it's full on, nobody's given me this, I'm not on this gentle glide path. It just keeps on coming at me. So I sort of, I'm going to finish on my penultimate day in 6th gear, and I have to then just calm and then see what else I'll do then. I have some ideas in my head about what I might do, but I think there's plenty I need to just catch up on as well there, and so rest, do that, and then consider just what the future holds then for Jane and I.
You said earlier, Drew, and I was just interested when you said that you live above the shop and you're open all hours. So do you have any time, this is probably a stupid question, for hobbies or things outside of work?
No. No, I would. I try and keep myself some sort of shape. I would cycle, and I read a bit as well. No, don't read as much as I used to, because I'm reading that much in work there, sort of when you get home. There's always, you sit down to something and you'd be disturbed 15 minutes later by a text about something that's happened somewhere. So
it's genuinely open all hours.
Yeah. So
are you a cook? Do you ever cook at home?
Oh, that's a bowl of contention there. You've opened up there. No, I can't say I do. No,
you don't know.
No. So no, well, that's something for me to learn.
There's something
for me to learn. Yeah, to look forward to. Yeah. So
you'll be leaving the job now at the beginning of June and off on that lovely holiday with Jane.
Yeah.
But what would you like people to be saying your legacy is? Because there'll be a lot of comment, I'm sure, in the media. There'll be a lot of a lot of analysis. What would you say your legacy is?
Several elements, I think, and we touched upon some of them, about the welfare of the Garda members, the changes we made there. The new Act starts, and so regrettably I'll not see all of the changes that's going to bring about, but certainly just the welfare of Garda members and the changes that we've made that I've outlined already, just uniform, equipment, supervision, all of those things. And then sort of looking outward, saying particularly our protective services units and our response then to crimes around domestic abuse or serious sexual assault. And also then just other work that we've done around the organised crime groups, and really, going sort of international in our efforts and getting, and now being well known.
You went to Dubai to talk to
yes, yeah. So I've been out to Dubai for some reason. So what I've found is there's nothing works as well as actually just going out and making contact with your opposite number. And we have a good story to sell. People know that we've invested a lot in, for instance, training. They know that the areas that we've been very successful in, and they want to learn from us. But we can always learn from others as well. And so just an open-handed, two-way street relationship really assists then in terms of just the working relationship and sharing of intelligence and information. And really that's what it's about there.
You're very driven by a strong personal philosophy in life, aren't you? Could you articulate that?
Well, I think in my heart, I'm a public servant, and like my public service is policing. I've enjoyed just being in a position, particularly as Garda Commissioner, but before that as well, but really particular as Garda Commissioner, to try and make a difference around people's experience. And some individuals in our society are in really grim circumstances through crime, and trying to make a difference for them, be it individuals who've been trafficked into the country and human trafficking, or the victims of domestic abuse, whatever it might be, trying to make a difference. And so, the crimes you prevent are the things are hard to quantify. But I know in my career, I've saved lives. Now I couldn't write out the list of the names of people I've saved, but I've saved lives through proper policing interventions, and so that's what drives me. The desire actually to do that, but make a difference, to do some good, to do a public good with the resources that are available to me in the vocation, the job that I'm in.
And when you look back on your career in policing, is there any little bit of advice that you would have given to your younger self at any point, or something that you might have done differently?
I think sort of looking back across all of it, I think it's always actually just been about people there in the end. All the other things you worry about around, structures and even money and all of that there, that's just, that's just the governance in behind it all. It's always all been about people. And I think that's true nearly of every walk of life. In the end, it comes down to the people that you're working with, and the sense then of having a mission and how best to deliver on that. So what actually motivates people and what gets them up in the morning to do a good job there. So,
and that's been with you always?
Yeah. Well, sort of looking back on it, I think that's just really the kernel of it all.
When you look at the world that we're currently living in and how it has changed dramatically in a relatively short period of time, between Gaza and Israel and Libya and Lebanon and Syria and Ukraine and Russia, and now at the very least a war of words between old allies like the United States and Canada and Mexico and the European Union. Looking at all of that, is there anything, if you could change it today, you would change?
Because this is changing times, and we know you're going into a change of time.
Well,
Drew,
so, they are changing times, and this too will pass. And we will all come out the far side of it, and it's the conversation then that we have about how we were in the middle of it all. And for my part, there's the rule of law, and there's actually following through on the international standards that we as a nation have stepped up to, be it the European Convention of Human Rights and our involvement with the UN and all of that. So it is about us, or certainly in the position I'm in, to make sure we're doing all that we can to be able to be at the far end of this, to say, well, you know, what we did, we can be proud of them. You know, we have no need to be embarrassed there. So I just, there's work to be done, there's good work to be done, and at all times you should concentrate that, because in the end, the backdrop and all this terrible backdrop that's going, there must be some resolution of it, and we want to make sure that we keep on with the positive in the meantime.
Thank you, as always, to our producer Enda Grace here at Dundara Television and Media in County Kildare.
Also thanks to our great researcher Anne-Marie Staunton and to our wonderful sponsor, the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
And if you're enjoying Changing Times, don't forget to follow the podcast, give us a rating, and maybe even leave a nice comment. It really helps us to reach more listeners.
So from all of us here in Allenwood, County Kildare, slán slán. Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
You can save up to $850 at Mattress Warehouse right now. And trust us when we say that'll go a long way. Visit mattresswarehouse.com.
Omaha Steaks makes it easy to keep great food on hand, so dinner time is simple and convenient. And right now, you can get 12 free burgers and free shipping for life when you shop at omahasteaks.com/onrepeat. Only Omaha Steaks gives you the freedom to set your menu your way with no commitments. Choose extra-aged, hand-carved steaks, plump and juicy air-chilled chicken, and so much more. Order once or set up recurring shipments for more savings, more convenience, and inflation-proof pricing. Want to change your menu? No problem. Swap items, skip a shipment, or cancel at any time with no questions asked. You're in control to get what you want when you want it, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. At Omaha Steaks, it's all about you. Visit omahasteaks.com/onrepeat to sign up for recurring shipments and get 12 free burgers, a $431 per year value, and free shipping for life. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.